Good evening. Happy New Year. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stipp?
Present.
Mr. Kennedy? Mr. Edmond?
Here.
Mrs. Lynn? Here. Mrs. Guerrero-Namir?
Present.
Mr. Bean?
Here.
Mr. Coffey?
Here.
Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Mark, time, march. Color guard, hold. Order, colors. Left, base. Post. Post. Colors. Present. Arms.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Arms. Post. Left. Base. Forward. Arms. Forward. Arch.
Good, thank you. I'd like to welcome all the visitors. This time, do we have public comments on any agenda items? Good, thank you. I'd like a motion to approve consent decree A through F.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
roll call, please.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stipp?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Namir?
Yes.
We're thankful that we have recommendations of, and awards, none by Central Campus, but we have some by West Campus.
Good evening. It is my favorite season of the year. It is the beginning of senior recognitions. So seniors, this is one of many recognitions that you guys will start to experience this semester. So tonight, we recognize the Joliet West Illinois State Scholars. The Illinois Student Assistance Commission recognizes seniors based on a combination of the students' exemplary college entrance scores, SAT for most of our students, and academic achievement while in high school. So I know that several students were not able to be here, but I'm going to call all the names, and when I call your name, you can please come up. You'll get, a nice picture. Parents, you can come up and take pictures as well, and then the board will come out and congratulate you when they call a break, okay? Madison Araha. Stephen Andrev. Praise God Anagahora. Just stand right there. Lennon Ashcroft. Don't worry, more will join you soon. Jackson Bartell. John Bells Hoover. Nicholas Blau, Braden Brophy, Brissa Cambray, Liliana Carranza, Esmeralda Cisneros, Samuel Cunningham, Nicholas Decalis, Andrea Dodge, Salome Elisheville, Lauren Gantz, Yoselyn Garcia, Caitlin Gibson, Myra Gutierrez, Kennedy Hosey, Kelsey Kobe, Tony Kochev, Allison Cabistel, Ellen Lundeen, Evelyn Mantilla, Haley Mazer, William Mendez, Jessica Meza, Matthew Matazlewski, Abby Morgan, Brandon Muff, Josiana Newby, Rebecca Norquist, Walter Nowacki, Matthew Papish, Adrian Pelez, Brandon Price, Andrea Ruiz Sanchez, Jacob Schmidt, Nathan Schramm, Emma Shoemaker, Sarah Shea, Etta Schuyler, Riley Smiles, Molly Stanzadowski, Tiffany Trisna, Lilia Villaflor, Matthew Walls, Maxwell Weber, Colin Wilcox, Sophie Young, and Sean Zabrowski.
Aw. It's so nice to have them here.
Congratulations.
Yeah, you guys.
And we have one more.
Shelley Clark's gonna.
Is she in the back? Yep, she's. Okay, we have district recognition, so if I could have Miss Shelley Clark come up and do our district recognition.
Good evening. It is with great pleasure that I recognize the Joliet Child Care Center on their accomplishment of being awarded a Gold Circle of Quality through Excel Rate Illinois. The Gold Circle of Quality recognizes programs which have met or exceeded quality benchmarks on all 15 standards as validated by the state-approved assessor. I ask that the Joliet Township staff members that are being recognized today come forward when your name is called. Lavinia Betts, Emma Lopez, Carrie Wakis, Teresa Howard Collins, April Melka, Marilyn Pierce, Deborah Clark.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to take a recess at this time so we can congratulate the recipients. Yeah, almost definitely.
Not for this one, then I'll get up, and then we'll put it back.
So she's.
Okay.
Do I need to do, okay.
Okay, get back into our meeting. So we go into our superintendent report, and as usual, we hand it over to her to continue with the rest of the agenda items.
Thank you. So as far as correspondence, and maybe it fits under legislation as well, we did get new COVID guidance, and so we are implementing that right now. I did attend a meeting on Friday with the Will County Health Department with area superintendents of the regional office, holds usually every other week, and they clarified some guidance for us. So we can use the 5 days where students can return after 5 days if they've been 24 hours symptom-free or improving significantly. However, they cannot return to sports or high-risk activities until day 11 because of the high transmission rate in our area. So other than that, if there's any other questions, I certainly can contact the Will County Health Department. They updated their forms, so things that we fill out are a little bit different now. And I just want to say that our staff has been doing an outstanding job making sure that we're doing everything possible to keep kids in person, which also was part of the guidance. So I don't know if you have any questions about that. Okay, and so then we also had our winter credit recovery report, which is part of your board packet. And Ms. McDonald, do you have a couple items to add?
To let the board know, winter credit recovery, thank you, is for students in core classes specific to graduation requirements. And we target students that fell in the range with their final percentage of 59 to 50%. So they were close to passing. The recovery program is 20 hours of direct instruction. So really a student that should be part of this program should be able to just finish their learning within 20 hours. So we ran it right after, during Christmas break, so it ran from the 28th, 29th, and 30th, and then for some students, they came back January 4th. As students finish, they aren't required to stay, so some students finish in a day that were close to passing, and some students may need the full day. This is taught by our staff here, and if you look at the data broken down, 179 semester credits were recovered during this time. We don't charge our families for this. We leverage our funding, so we're leveraging our after-school grants to pay for this, so it is at no expense to our families, which is a benefit because of just the impact COVID has had on our community.
Thank you, Mrs. McDonald. Are there any questions? This is something we've been running in the district for quite a while, though the additional grant funding has made it possible for it to be at no cost, so we're really thankful for that. So our next presentation is Miss Megan Gertz, and we're doing this virtually, so I think Riley is helping me off here, or helping me out. Okay, so do I need to do anything? Admit? Or are you doing that?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Megan. Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can. And so I have the microphone in front of me, but the entire board and our room can see you very clearly. And so you're sort of off to the side. So if I'm not looking directly at you, that is why. But I'd like to introduce Megan. She is someone that we're looking at and recommending to facilitate our strategic planning process. But I will let Megan introduce herself and her background, and then obviously any questions that you may have. So I'll turn it over to you, Megan.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I very, very much appreciate the opportunity. This is just a wonderful next step that I get to take to present in front of not only Mr. Edmond, who I had an opportunity to visit with earlier, but the entire Joliet Township Board. So thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and project. I want to make sure that everybody can see the presentation that I have prepared. It is the same that is in your board packet. So give me a moment to navigate that. I believe that you should now be seeing my presentation as well.
Yes, we are, Megan.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I'm going to begin just by sharing a little bit about myself, and then I'll obviously go through and share a little bit about our process that I'm recommending for your strategic plan. And obviously, if there's questions, we can certainly interject and identify any answers at that point.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Okay, so my name is Megan Gertz. I'll tell you a little bit about me professionally, personally, and then a little bit about my process of planning. This is actually my 16th year in public education. I have had an opportunity to be in a rural, suburban, and an urban setting. I've been a teacher, a district level leader, and also had some administrative roles. My biggest process of planning experience that I had was that for 5 years in the Millard Public School District, I was a leadership and learning facilitator, and I was responsible for creating the staff development, the strategic planning, and then the school-based site planning for the third largest school district in the state of Nebraska. My current role is that I am a Spanish teacher at Millard Central Middle School in Omaha, Nebraska. Soy maestra de español y habla español. So I am a Spanish teacher and I do speak Spanish and English. A little bit about me personally. I am a mother to 4 boys. Typically the joke that I say, which isn't a joke, is that I enjoy working because it allows me to relax. I have not had to patch drywall while I have been a strategic planning consultant nor an educator. And at home, that's a different story. Since 2013, I have worked as an educator, but I've also been in private consultation, working with school districts, businesses, and also nonprofits as they go through and develop their strategic plans, school-based site plans, and also just team building and other facilitation services. I am trained as an internal and external facilitator in the Cambridge and Cambrian model, which I know that Joliet Township has also been a part of for a number of years. So I'm going to share right now a little bit about my process of planning and the very beginning phase that I would assist you if we would go into contract with one another is that preparation of planning. And that's really a 3-step process. The first step obviously would be to assist in building some stakeholder input. So before you go through that process of identifying your most critical issues, you have to reach out to your community and you have to collect some vital signs data from your community stakeholders. So once that's created, we'll start to build what's called a data book. And from there, we will also build our strategic planning team. It's very important that we cast a wide net. That way we're able to have all facets of your community represented. And then finally, we'll identify a communication plan of how we'd like to move forward and communicate with your stakeholders about the process of planning, the timeline, and the most important next steps. Certainly, the bulk of the together time in strategic planning is our first planning session. And typically that is about 3 days. And in my initial conversations with Ms. Schlishman and Dr. Guzman, we've identified as summer 2022 as probably when this would take place. We would go through a process of identifying your belief statements, going through your parameters, looking at your mission statement and creating that loftiest aspiration for your school district, defining your objectives, which are really your measurement tools, and then doing an internal and external analysis, which is essentially a SWOT analysis, looking at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. At the end of that planning session, we will have determined your most critical issues. And those most critical issues that you have to address will become your strategies of your strategic plan. Then the next phase begins. The next phase is the action teams. And this is really the heavy lifting of strategic planning. So as your external facilitator, what I will help you do at this point is to draft your strategic plan and how you're going to communicate it with your community to make sure that we're engaging all your stakeholders. And certainly we're going to encourage them to join an action team. I would also assist in developing your action team leaders and guiding them through that process. Typically, we would have between 4 and 8 action team meetings. So my role is to help prepare them for those experiences, whether it be materials, training, presentation, and really just building confidence in your action team leaders at that point. So there are really 2 leaders in this process. They are the internal leaders, the internal facilitators, and external facilitators. And my role is certainly the external facilitator. So once you have those action team meetings happening, I will provide regular check-ins with your action team leaders and also your internal facilitators. And your internal facilitators would then be supporting your action teams, but they would also be having regular check-ins with your district leadership and also your Board of Education to make sure that there's good quality control and that everybody is satisfied with the results as they are being developed. And as I said earlier, action team meetings have not yet been officially determined, but ideally that timeline looks to be fall of this year. And again, there's about 4 to 8 action team meetings, just depending upon the depth of those strategies and the research that we would need to dive into. It looks like we'll be gathering for the final time in what's called your second planning session. And this would be after your action plans are developed. So we will reconvene your district strategic planning team. We will revisit and finalize your belief statements, your parameters, your mission statement and objectives. At that point, we would hear reports from action team leaders, and then the strategic planning team has the role of either approving, modifying, or rejecting those action plans. And the goal is to leave the second planning session with a finalized strategic plan. And I say finalized, meaning that it's finalized for the district strategic planning team, but truly the final steps would then be obtaining board approval, establishing an implementation schedule, and then communicating that strategic plan to the entire Joliet Township community. So to summarize my role, I would be proposing to serve as your external facilitator as you go through this strategic planning process. Over the last 9 years, I've had the opportunity to work with over 50 clients. If we entered contract, you would actually be my 55th. And so I would be providing external and objective leadership to your district, to your action team leaders, and overall the entire strategic planning team. Previous clients of mine have said that I provide very streamlined, great electronic resources throughout the duration of the process. Yo puedo hablar en español y también yo puedo facilitar también totalmente en español. So certainly an asset that I would provide would be facilitation services in both English and Spanish to make sure we're being inclusive to all members of the strategic planning team, and that not only facilitation, but materials would be provided in dual language. I very much believe in having a transparent and team-based approach to planning. And so I very much would welcome questions at this time. And thanks again for the opportunity to present for the board.
And thank you, Megan. And if I could just talk a little bit about our process in me bringing the recommendation of Megan to the board. We're very fortunate to have a facilitator, Mr. Howard Fedema, who began working with the district in 2001. And Megan knows Howard, and that's how we came to know Megan. So Howard was scheduled to do strategic planning the summer of 2020 with us when COVID hit. So we put strategic planning on hold at that time because obviously everything in our world had changed and there was a lot of changing that was happening. And last summer was really no different, unfortunately. We had still a lot of change and a lot of information that was coming at us as far as how to even just get school back with all of our kids back in. So during that time, Howard had mentioned that he was going to retire. He had been retired for a while. When we first started working with Howard, he worked for Cambridge. And so he utilized the process that he was trained in from Cambridge. And so knowing that he was retired, then I talked to Hanover, which is our research consultant that we use, and I asked them in the fall of 2020 to provide me with research of vetting strategic planning consultants, as well as what are the research-based portions that we should be thinking about when we're doing strategic planning. I reached out to the Illinois Association for School Administrators to see if they had any recommendations for me. Christine Schlichtman reached out to our communication network, which is a national network, and we got one person's name from that. And what we learned when we were talking to other schools, many schools do internal strategic planning where they use like an internal facilitator from their school. However, process we used in the past and the process that I've been familiar with since 2001, because I was an action team leader actually in 2001, has served us well. And so was really looking for a similar process. So I also looked out to Cambrian and asked them for a proposal. And I think in looking through all of the information and talking with our counterparts at different districts, I think it's important to stick with a process that has served us well, which is Cambrian, and based on vetting the people we know of who know this process, I believe Megan will serve us well. What questions do you have for me or for Megan?
Megan, can you just share your experience with working with diverse population?
Megan, did you hear that? Megan, can you share your your experience with working with diverse populations?
Absolutely. So in Omaha, where I am at currently, Omaha is a metropolitan area of about 500,000 people. The school that I currently work at is over 75% free and reduced lunch. Diverse community is very important to me. I live in a diverse community. I send my kids to my school where they can, I feel like it's important to live in a world and show our children how to engage with people who have different belief systems and different backgrounds than themselves. I have a master's degree in urban education. I student taught in an urban population in Chicago, actually. What else can I tell you? I have worked as a strategic planning consultant. One of the most diverse clients that I've had is Crete, Nebraska. And Crete, although it is a more rural population, has a number of refugee communities. And so one of my most challenging groups that I've worked with was building consensus in that community, just because of the unique belief systems and diversity that was brought about in that community.
Any other questions?
She's gonna be in person, right?
Yes, Megan, the question was, you would be in person during the summer and then during the day when you come back to work with the strategic planning team.
Yes, I would envision actually visiting in person 2 times for sure, potentially a third time. So the first planning session, that 3-day session in the summer, I would be in person. And I would certainly be in person for the second planning session when I would come back and to approve the strategic plan. And depending on the needs, we could consider doing action team leader training virtually or in person as well.
And that's been similar, that's a great question. That's been similar to the process in the past when our external facilitator has been in person with us. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you, Megan, for virtually meeting with us this evening. And we have all kinds of things set up so that it could happen. So thank you very much, and I'll be in contact with you.
Thank you so much, and appreciate Tanya and Riley in setting up the tech for today. Very much appreciate it.
We appreciate you too, because I heard it took a couple tries. So thank you for your patience too.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Can I just make a comment too, now that she's gone? Sorry. I also appreciate the fact that we took somebody with all of these years of experience that's trained in a model, and we got her for a fraction of the cost. I think that is important as stewards of taxpayer money. And then the other part is, I do think, even more than a facilitator, I think it's important that a lot of folks that are engaged in strategic planning and that are engaged with our students in general are people that work here that do extras, like Tanya being on boosters, and like other people in this room, you know, doing after school and extracurricular activities. and the parents that are involved. And I think we have a really good pool, because Michelle's point was important, diversity. We have a really good group of people that are involved in steering this and part of that committee, and that have been for years. So I think that's important too, regardless of facilitating. Thank you.
Any other questions for me? Thank you. So next, we have our educational services update from Mrs. Diane McDonald. Oh, and here too.
Transitioning here.
I know that's.
Thank you. Do you need me to do anything, Riley?
Like it.
You got it? Okay. Thank you.
She gets spoiled.
Sorry, that's Ed's. Can't have that.
Oh, it's Ed. As this is getting pulled up, we just thought it was important to provide a summary of first semester with some benchmarks from really associated with educational services. There were a lot of things we piloted, and though this year has presented its own set of difficulties, there's also been some successes, but then there's also things that we have found that we will look at going forward as part of this presentation as well as the next one.
Sorry, just disconnected. Hold on. We didn't practice this part.
That's okay. All right. So good evening. As Dr. Guzman said, this is a brief overview of semester one.
Didn't practice that either.
Teamwork makes the dream work. All right, here we go. All right, so we'll start with Gateway to Graduation and to provide a brief overview of the program. So Gateway to Graduation program was started last school year during when all students were remote. This year, our buildings identified students at both campuses that really needed holistic support academically and also social, emotional, and post-secondary planning. So they've identified students and met with their families, and what we did was we gave them a modified schedule for core classes using Apex and also a traditional schedule for those electives and PE. At the Central Campus, the program is oversaw by Mike O'Shea and Marissa Cantu. We have 44 students enrolled, and just this semester, 179 semester credits were earned by these students. At West Campus, Summer Stice and Kathy Lingefelter oversee it. We have 25 students enrolled, and I want to point out the reason why we have less students at West. This was one area that we did not fill for hiring for this school year. So Kathy is actually doing some classes with Gateway, and she's in the classroom as well. So she has 2 roles right now, and we appreciate that. So we could not enroll as many students as we needed. But again, successfully, 128 semester credits were earned by our students. And many of them have gotten back on track for graduation.
Diane, can I just interrupt you?
Sure.
Because there's multiple components to this, so if any board members have any questions as we're moving along about a specific area, just shout it out while we're on the slide. If you think about it at that point,
can
we're
pause.
totally fine with that.
I've got a quick question then.
Sure.
It appears Central, each student's earning an average of 4 credits, but West is 5. Is there a reason for the discrepancy?
It just depends on the attendance of the student coming to school. It also depends on where they are with their academics. So it's really, like every student has their unique learning plans. So I don't want to say that, West versus Central. It's really, we take this, and also you can compare this to our Pathways program. Every student has their own plan.
Okay.
Diane, is it true, and maybe I have this wrong, but as far as Apex, they were really sort of allowing about 2 credits?
Only two
classes at a time?
2 classes at a time.
Because it's online, and so because students are allowed to go at different paces, they might be, a course might be taking a longer period of time or a shorter, exactly for what Diane said, but we felt it was important to not just have everyone in the same amount of classes because different kids need different things. So some kids have earned more credits than their counterparts in a regular school schedule are during the day, and some have taken more time to get back on track, if that helps.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. So the next program that we offered as a result of COVID, and we carried it on to this school year, is our online tutoring. So just to background is that students can sign up online depending on what course area they need support in. We offer tutoring by our own staff in the late afternoons, evenings, and on weekends also. Weekends are actually very popular with our students. This semester, we had 356 online tutoring sessions scheduled. We did a data dive at the end of the semester, and that was 138 unique students that attended at least one session. 68 of them improved their grade. And out of that, because I compared how many A's, B's, C's, and D's they had initially going into tutoring and at the end of the semester. So 53% of the students that engaged in online tutoring had a passing grade at the onset of tutoring, and then 85% had a passing grade at the end of tutoring. So it does impact, our online tutoring is very popular with our math classes. That is the highest area that students enroll in.
I can't see the classes that are,
Oh, it's all. So it's our ELL bilingual, English, world languages, math, science, and social studies.
Did you get that? I made it a little bigger like that.
And it's on our, so if students go to our web pages, they just pick virtual tutoring and they can sign up. And this is often in our parent communications as well as a reminder of tutoring. In-person tutoring, this just was started this year. It was actually one of our science teachers, Nick Zorn at the Central Campus, very popular with our chemistry kids at Central. He started offering just morning tutoring, like preparing for the test. And that just was grassroots, and it continued on at both campuses. So we did in-person supports for chemistry and physics. 142 unique students attended at least one session. 37 students improved their grade. The success rate wasn't as high as we wanted to. So that's an area that we're going to work on with Ms. Zimmerman this semester, just to do better data collection of actually which students are attending and how that impacts their grade. Also, we started bilingual after-school in-person tutoring, supporting students in English, math, and social science. 40 individual students attended at least one session. 23 students improved their grade, and that was a 58% success rate. I just want to say both of these, the in-person tutoring started in mid-October. So it was a slow start for this one compared to online tutoring, which started at the beginning of the school year.
So, we're saying we're gonna do better data collection, because maybe perhaps we have the number of students, but we don't necessarily have the data on who really did better or not. Is that what you're saying?
Correct, that's right. It's because it was at the teacher level, with the online tutoring, we kept the data. This is at the teacher level, so we were dependent on their data. So we're gonna change the collection system for second semester.
And then also have it available from the start of the semester.
Yes.
had to have had a better improvement for that many students to keep coming and telling us.
Oh, right. Right, and in the board report, we went over winter credit recovery. This is a very successful program, and we appreciate the grant funding for this. Again, 179 semester credits were recovered this past winter.
And Diane, if I could, going back to the in-person tutoring, and I want to make sure I have this. Nick Zorn is a chemistry teacher. So chemistry is also an elective. So when we say improved grade, we also have to see where the starting grades are and passing and that too, because that's an elective choice. It's not a graduation requirement.
A student may have a B in there, and they end up with a B too. So it's not just about like having a failing grade. It's about just, where they are. Yes. Yes. Thank you. So another area that we just added for the school year upon board approval is our math interventionist. So I'm going to turn it over to Tony Dubchek and Rebecca Stortz. They are our math interventionists at each campus. And I told them at the beginning of the school year, they're going to have to give a board presentation on how it went first semester. So we're really excited to share the successes from this semester. They made an impact on our students, and they have some ideas already for next year. So turning it over to Tony and Rebecca. I'll leave my computer up here for you.
I'm Rebecca Stortz, so I've been a teacher at Joliet West. This is my 12th year, and then obviously my first year in this math interventionist role.
And I'm Tony Dubchek. I've been at Joliet Central for 4 years. One thing that we began in this new position was working with Diane and Nicole to decide what students were we going to begin to work with, because there's only 2 of us, 1 of us at each campus. We obviously can't work with every single math student. So we targeted students that were in single period math classes that had okay to excellent attendance, that scored low on their STAR test. The STAR test is an adaptive testing system. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. They take it 3 times. And we looked at students who had urgent intervention or intervention in their STAR scores. We utilized their grade reports. Oh, it's also up there. We utilized grade reports, the STAR data, cross-referenced students who had C's, D's, F's, and labeled that in their STAR scores, and communicated with teachers to narrow down those lists to ensure that teachers were in the loop of what we were doing and that we were selecting students that were going to benefit from this program.
So different ways we provided supports to students. Our main program is our advisory program, and students who we identified and selected to work in that program work with us from Monday through Thursday. We work to remediate maybe some prerequisite or skills that they may have had some learning loss due to the pandemic that are going to be required to be successful in their course level material, as well as also working on their course level material, preparing for tests so that they can be successful in their current class. On Fridays, we did push-in and pull-outs. This kind of allowed us to go into some of those block classes, since those students weren't being worked with in advisory, since they were already receiving 2 hours of math. That way we could take out small groups of students that needed some targeted supports and provide support to them, which also, when we would do a pullout, would then provide a smaller class structure for those that remained with their teacher to work on the skills that they needed to. Or just push-ins where we team taught a class with another teacher, again, to support those students. In addition, we provide after-school tutoring Mondays through Thursdays to our advisory students, or by appointment based on like if a teacher reached out to us and let us know that there was a student that needed some support from us.
So that was kind of a lot. So this is a more visual representation of our program, where, like we said, Monday through Thursday, we have our advisory intervention program running. And 2 days a week, we work on foundational skills, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, those necessary skills that students should have mastered in middle school, elementary, but may be lacking in what they're learning right now and holding them back. And then 2 days a week, we worked on class content. As we got closer to the end of the semester, we really focused more on class content to ensure that they were ready to pass or getting as close to passing and available to take credit recovery if that was gonna be their option. And then Fridays is our push and pull out day. Any questions about the schedule? Okay, just kind of laugh.
And then this was some of our numbers. So first is the number of students supported during advisory. This was a little bit of a learning process for us. So some students, not all students remained with us for the whole semester. Some students, as we started to work with them, were able to remediate some of those deficit skills, be kind of set up for success and able to go back into their normal class without that advisory support and could just utilize for after school support. So that maybe like if you look at some of the differences in our numbers, just some students needed to stay longer versus others maybe who didn't need to stay as long. We did provide targeted support for students who failed a summative assessment. So as we started to have some students able to move out of our advisory program, at the end of the semester, we had some time left and we looked at students who are currently failing their math course, if we could pull them in to remediate some of their assessments, kind of similar to what they would do in credit recovery with us during the school year before the end of the semester, or get them to the range where they could finish it during credit recovery. So then you can also see our number of students who increased their STAR score, and then those with a passing grade, which again, ideally we would love to have all of our students who work with us with a passing grade. Some we did take on at the end of the semester, and so at that point in time we could recover maybe 1 or 2 units, and then they would finish the rest of them in credit recovery.
Questions for our team?
It's great work. Could you see yourself asking for more help?
Yeah, I think like we've found that this has been a great support for some of our students, especially like we just started our first day with our new group this semester, and just talking to these students, what they've experienced over the last year and a half, 2 years in school, being able to have, one of the other things we put on here is some of our student feedback, being able for those students to have a safe space to be successful in math, as well as a safe adult relationship in the building, I think was really critical to setting up some students to success. So these were just kind of some of the things, the student written, some of the feedback that we got on our end of like when a student would leave us, we would ask them for this feedback, and just some of the things that students had said about working with us.
Yeah, like some of my favorite ones are like, my grade improved by 2 letters, I understand the lessons more. One that really resonates with me is I feel comfortable asking questions. We're in a smaller environment, so being able to ask a question in front of 8 people rather than 32 people is low risk, and it prepares them to ask questions later when they are in their math class with the wider groups of students. And I mean, these are just some quotes, but I would say the feedback that we got was absolutely like phenomenal. Some of the students we did carry back from last semester who really needed the help, and other ones have visited me saying like, I miss you, like, I really like this. They'll come to me after school for tutoring, which is something they probably wouldn't have done before. And like Becky was saying, like, the classroom environment is amazing, and I think the students genuinely love it.
Why don't you share also what you've done for staff?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot. Oh, that was me, okay. So we also talked about just some of the ways we've found to support staff so that they can also support students. We're both members of the Math Instructional Leadership Team. We both serve on the Algebra Leadership Team, and Tony serves on the Geometry Leadership Team. We did work kind of in the beginning of the school year to check in with teachers because we are implementing a new Carnegie curriculum, which is very rigorous for our students. It has a high level of reading and assumes a very high level of prerequisite skills. So we've tried to create as much as we can to support staff in bringing students to that level. So checking in with teachers, providing professional development on how to utilize STAR data, as well as our Edulastic assessments, and then compiling resources. So if we did an intervention, we shared it with, we noticed that our students were struggling with this, and then we would share it with teachers so they could utilize it with their students. We did create what we called prerequisite skills checks, meaning for this unit, if students are coming to you with deficits on these skills, they're going to struggle. So giving those to students at the beginning to identify those deficits and remediate them so that they could be successful in the current unit And then if they were deficit in something, reaching out to us or utilizing our resources so that they could, or were prepared for the curriculum.
I know, wow, right? Wow. Oh, they're our pioneers. I've been watching 1883, like, so they're like our pioneers. So, thank you. But you can see, like,
Thank you.
wow, huge impact. Thank you again. And next steps, I just wanted to say, they have already some ideas for next year. They actually are thinking about having an advisory, each of them next year, and they would have some of their students with them so that they could spend more time with them. So like, these people they're doing amazing things with our students. So let's talk about how our kids did first semester. They did great. You know, it was a hard semester. We heard that from our students, from our families, from our teachers, from all of us here. It was a hard semester, but our students persevered, our teachers persevered, and we had a great distribution of grades. These grades are comparable to pre-COVID, so I'm really proud of what our teachers, our curriculum directors, everybody working with our students and staff to really to allow students to experience success in this environment that a lot of us are struggling through. So I'm very proud of what we've done first semester. Now I'm going to take us through some data, okay? Stop me at any time, but I'm going to actually move to the screen because I like to touch the charts. That's just how I am. So I'll move over here. So I'm going to start with STAR Math. And this ties into actually what Tony and Rebecca just said, which will lead into a little more questions you may have. So a STAR Math assessment is given by Renaissance. It's an organization, it's a nationally known test that uses, it's a responsive test, so it responds to where students are. So if they're excelling, it will push them to the higher level. If they're struggling, it will take them down a level. So it is responsive. Students take, it's not a time test, they could take it within a period. It's 34 questions. We assign it based on grade level. Extended time can be given. Test adapts, like I said, for the student. The focus is really algebra and geometry. So students that are in advanced algebra, it's not additional, like higher level algebra, it's your basic algebra and your basic geometry. So I want to break down this information here. So what you're seeing here is all ninth grade students, that average scale score, their winter average scale score, and how much they've grown. So this is taking all students together. The further slides that we're going to go into, I break it down by course. Okay, so this gives you a picture of just general of how our students did in the fall. So this is where they came in at. This is where, after instruction, so they took us in September, they took this at right before finals, so in mid-December, okay, for both campuses. We see growth at both campuses, which shows that our students are learning and growing while they're with us. Now I'm going to break it down by course. So each slide is structured just like this. This blue is always central, yellow is west. The green box down here tells you where our students should be. Proficiency benchmark. So this is where they should be for the fall. This is where they should be in winter. This is based on their grade level, and proficiency means that that if they are here, so if a freshman is at 780 in the fall, they are most likely to make their winter and spring growth benchmarks. Up here shows you how many students we tested in the fall and in winter. Blue is fall, orange is winter, and then in the spring I'll have gray. Students that are at or above are at that 40% percentile. That means they're in the green zone. They're at where they're supposed to be. Intervention is students below 25%. Urgent intervention is below 10%. So
So I want to point out that the courses for freshmen take you from instructional level to algebra double block, are being bilingual at Central and on honors. And looking at this, and I'll go through the data a little faster, but I wanted to walk you through the slide first, is that our students coming in to us are not at benchmark except for our algebra honors. They do grow, but they're below benchmark. And you can see how it shifts, but this is good shifts because blue is where they started, orange is where they're, fall. So we have more students on at or above benchmark. We still have work to do, but you'll see how it, once I get to 10th grade, how the impact with Carnegie shows that what our teachers are doing in math is working. Here's West Campus. Again, I want to point out the fall testing numbers are a little different. We had number unfilled positions at the West Campus, and we had a lot of subs. So not all students got tested in the fall. So that is one area that I wanted to point out. Again,
With saying that though, I do want to give credit to you and Nicole and all the teachers because the data was much better for taking the test this year than it was last year, obviously with remote and everything. And so while we had some issues with like subs in and out at the beginning of the year, you guys did a really great job ensuring that the test got taken so we have data. So thank you.
thank you. But pointing out here that the students in algebra, the average, our students are on benchmark outside of algebra honors. And more students move to at and above. So this is where I want to share some information. And working with some of our math teachers, what they reported this school year is that they have more students in their classes that are below grade level. And when I say below grade level, below a 5th grade level. So I'll share that. So I broke it down by algebra and algebra 1 double block, Central West. So 36 students were below a 5th grade level in an algebra class at Joliet West. And when we did the winter benchmark, we got it down to 26. So that means that students were back on track, but we still have quite a few students still off track. In algebra double block, we had 94 students below a 5th grade level coming in to us in the fall. Again, we grew some, but we still have students that are still at a below or 5th grade level. And then West Campus, here's the data as well. So this data, having conversations with our math teachers, our math curriculum director, and also looking at the Hanover data that they've been working with on, we've noticed that our odd, when I showed you this graph here, this at or above benchmark, we were always in like the 55, 56% of our students since 2017. We're at like 26% now. So like last year was in the 40s. This year it's 26%. So that is a great area of concern for us. And here's the data just to show you. So you can see Hanover's been, we've been giving this test for a while. They collected since 2017, so we've always been in at 55. Last year it dropped to 46. This year we're at 22. I separated it because I wanted to know students with IEPs versus students without IEPs. But you can see how our urgent intervention went from 9% to 21. Intervention 24 to 37. Students with IEPs 46 to 57. So this was a grave concern to us, and we had a lot of conversation. And we're proposing, and Dr. Guzman included this in her board presentation. CCC, our curriculum council, coordinating curriculum council, I was unable to facilitate last Thursday. My mother-in-law passed, and so I had to not be there. I don't, based on the conversations that I had with people attending and with Mrs. McMorris, the curriculum director, not all the information was shared, and I think there were some concerns. So I'm going to call
call another meeting to share more data with them and talk them through this, because this is a class that I feel, based on the data, like it's not a gut, it's in front of us, the data's there, that we should be offering this to our students as a double block class. So what we are proposing, the math teachers and Mrs. Morris and I are proposing, is that we offer a new math course for our incoming ninth graders. We'll use PSAT and working with our middle school teachers using their math data or their STAR data to place students. The course will focus in on a lot of those foundational skills that Rebecca and Tony talked about that they're working with students on. It would be 2 semesters, 2 credits, because it would be double block. So a potential sequence of math for this group of students would be foundations of algebra their freshman year. Then they would take algebra their sophomore year, 11th grade geometry, and then potentially advanced algebra their 12th grade year, compared to students that would be on the traditional track. We don't see this as a permanent, we see this as a temporary solution until our students in our community are able to catch up based on what COVID has done with students not being in school and learning remotely. Mrs. Stipp?
Does the foundations of algebra meet the state's criteria for a math class to graduate?
Yes, because the graduation requirement for the state of Illinois is 3 years of math. 1 must be Algebra 1, and 1 must be geometry content. So our current language in our board policy 6300 is 3 credits of math, which must include Algebra 1, geometry, and advanced algebra. We would recommend, that I would bring to the board in the next month, is that it would be 3 credits in math, which must include algebra and geometry. Ms. Lynn?
How does our data look in comparison of the rest of the state? I know all schools right now are seeing a big gap in the mathematics. So how is that comparatively? Are we more in a dire situation, or about where other districts are?
So I can answer that just on my experiences. So working with District 86 and Troy, our 2 biggest center schools, they are experiencing that as well with math. So they're putting interventions together for their students. So they're experiencing that at the middle school level, and working with the area superintendents, Southwest superintendents. Everything is all about math right now. Like, everybody's experiencing it. Like, they're all struggling with this.
Ms. McDonald too, and perhaps we could send this out, but there was, and if I'm incorrect, please correct me, but there was an ECRA study that was shared with us too.
Correct.
About, I'm gonna say dips, in both reading and math.
And math was the biggest impact compared to reading. But that was a recent ECRA study as well. And that was a study with grades 3 through 8, the impact on COVID on their learning. And they saw, I think it was, I don't have the data in front of me, but it was 6 months of learning, how would you say, learning loss that they're seeing in students grades 3rd grade through 8th grade, specific to math, and more in students of color.
And it was tied to the amount of remote learning that had occurred. So we can send that out. It was a good visual.
That was part of the data that I shared at CCC.
Yeah.
So I'm confused, just because of studies I've seen in math and things I've done in math, is that it's not beneficial to remediate like this. It's better to teach grade level and put the interventions in place versus kind of lowering the standards, because having a foundation isn't that algebra level standard. So I'm guessing, like, my question is, have you done are there studies showing that this is going to be more beneficial versus teaching grade level with intense interventions put in place?
Well, we do have that. We have math with double block. I can go back to that data. So we do have that. That's Algebra 1 double block. So they're teaching Algebra 1 content in a double period with those interventions. yet we're still not seeing our students moving up to that grade level. And this is, I just identified students that were below that 5th grade. So we do have that structure that you're talking about is placed, but because the students are lacking those foundational skills, even in a double block class with those interventions, we are still unsuccessful in, like,
So in double block, do they teach those foundational skills, or is it based practicing more algebra skills?
It's both.
both.
It's both. And one of the teachers I met with who shared data, who teaches an Algebra 1 double block, which made us look at how many kids are specifically lower than 5th grade in their level according to STAR. Because what this teacher was seeing was the students were making the growth on the Renaissance lessons, on the lessons that were tied to where they were at. But then they were taking the algebra content tests, and they were not able to complete it, and they were giving up, and they were experiencing, I'm going to say just failure, because they couldn't do this piece, but they could do this piece. So that's where we started looking at what other schools are doing as well, because another component is we wanted to make sure this wouldn't jeopardize kids' NCAA eligibility with the clearinghouse. So we looked at what other schools are doing too. And so this is specifically for those kids that are, and what we were targeting is below 5th grade, because there was so much catching up to do that those students weren't being successful. The kids that were 5th grade, 6th grade were, but the kids through 1 and 4th grade, and we were seeing more kids at 1st and 2nd grade math level, and we saw the increase each year.
So this is where my question comes from. So in most districts have gotten away from pre-algebra, foundational algebra. And so it's because the studies show that, again, not having that grade level course, that having kids in grade level courses didn't help. So I'm guessing you're proposing this class. Do you have any data to back up that this is going to, are studies done showing that this is going to show the success where the other studies show it's not? Does my question make sense?
I don't know if I have data to say it's gonna work, because we've never done this before, shifting our courses to algebra.
But we've had algebra and the shift, we used to have it years past. We got away from it, and now you're kind of going back. And I guess that's where I'm confusing, because everything I have learned about mathematics shows that's not good. You should always be at grade level and put the interventions into place. And I know I see this data, but I'm just concerned that we're lowering the standards for a certain group of students.
We're trying to meet the students that are really low where they're at to see if we can be more effective with them. It's not all students, it's a smaller amount of students, but the problem is it's a growing number of students. And our teachers have been striving to put in and differentiate, but they have so many different needs in the classroom that we believe, and in talking with the math teachers, they too believe they can be more effective in this manner. This is where it came from, looking at it. So when we've had pre-algebra, and that's going way back, way back when. So and I can't remember having, did we have double blocked pre-algebra? I don't believe so. So students were able to graduate about 15 years ago with consumer math and general math. And there was no other requirement to even get to algebra. And then I know we tried a period and a half of algebra at one point, but really we made a drastic change when we put in the extra period. So that's when the double block came into existence, because I do remember teaching, and I know I'm dating myself, when we didn't have 8 periods for freshmen and it was just 7. And I think a year prior to that, we attempted to do a period and a half that was like advisory, if that's what we used to call it. So we haven't seen this before with the curriculum that we're currently doing. So I can't answer your specific question, but that's why we would like to try this, especially because there's a growing number of kids that are coming in 1st through 4th grade math level. And then obviously we would measure it significantly, because the goal is still, I mean, they still need to have algebra and geometry to graduate.
And I want to leverage what the math interventionist said, is that we want our students to experience success. So right now, our students in those double block classes that are below grade level, they're struggling and they get frustrated and they shut down. So our working with Nicole and her team, we feel that we can sort of reignite, like, we don't want them to shut down about math. So we're hoping that this class, like the way we structure it, the way we build it, is that it's going to not only give that personalization to those students, but also give them that confidence that, like, hey, you can do this. We're just gonna refine those skills that, like, you may have lost or have never, you may have lost, so that you're ready for that algebra class. It's this, you asked a viable question. I don't have research on this. It's us working with the math teachers, listening to the other districts of what they're doing, and also, just reading some, like, looking at our data, like, so, like, going back to that, where's my chart from, there, like, I mean, that's telling us that something's going on. So how do we respond to it? We already have math double block. We are working with, like, AIR and, like, refining our interventions and, like, refining our interventions that we're doing in our classes. But there is a growing group of students, because, no fault to anyone, but because of the pandemic and what it has done to our community, our students were, like, a lot of our students were remote for such a long time that they were unable to really hone in on those math skills, which are foundational. Because when we looked at that data, the STAR data, it is a lot of skills related to third grade, like those basic foundational skills. And that's what they really want to focus in on in this class. And listening to Rebecca and Tony, that's what they're doing as math interventionists. But we have 2 of them, and we can reach more students by really focusing in on a class like this and working with that group of our students until they're ready.
We are employing MTSS, correct? So at the second tier, what program is being used?
So tier 2 is our math double block. So that is, they're receiving our curriculum, because you receive the same curriculum as your algebra class, and then they have the second period for interventions. So our teachers leverage the Carnegie curriculum, and with the resources there that they provide our students the interventions during that time.
So no other research-based curriculum to?
We don't use, like, the teachers have Renaissance, Mrs. Smith. Stiff, sorry. Stiff. I'm sorry.
Tired.
It's been a long day.
I get it all the time.
They leverage the reports from Renaissance, and it tells where their students are in regards to skill sets and what skills that they need to work on, and it also gives them those high leverage practices. But that is also an area that we're working with AIR and MTSS to actually improve upon.
I guess my question is, we're focusing on those that are below 5th grade level. It looks like we got our 9th graders at 247 students district-wide in the fall, out of 6,800 students, and we're talking about lowering graduation requirements to meet 3.5 to 3.6% of our student population. Why would we lower the graduation requirement for all when we're just simply talking about adding a new class that would be beneficial to 3.6% of our population, and they could still take the advanced algebra their senior year under your proposed classes, so they could still meet the graduation requirements, still using foundations of algebra in 9th grade?
I think that's a very fair question, and we talk all the time about all the aspects of what does career and college readiness mean, and we're always very cognizant, and that's one of the questions that the CCC members had too, because whenever you put a kid in a double block class, that's one less elective that they can take, and so in looking at this, a kid who starts in algebra would still be required to take advanced algebra to graduate, because 3 years are still required for graduation. So it's still a 3-year math requirement, but there's some built-in flexibility there to ensure that we're making sure we're meeting all kids' needs. Because a student might benefit more from a class in the career and technical field than potentially advanced algebra, depending on what their career path is. So it's not saying that math isn't important, and I used to say this all the time when I was curriculum director for science. Believe me, I think chemistry is uber important. But one of the reasons that I never went to ask for a 3-year graduation requirement in science was the same reason. That kids that are going into a science-based field or an engineering-based field or a math-based field, we're gonna guide them into taking the 4 years of math. But we also look at just what their career paths are and what they're gonna benefit the most from. So that's why we were trying to be very careful about the potential policy change to graduation requirements, where most kids are still gonna end up taking the advanced algebra class, because advanced algebra, when you pass geometry, is really the next class that you have to take. Because you can't really go into any other math class until you take that class. I think you can go into probability and statistics at the same time potentially, but is that true, Nicole?
Advanced algebra.
So advanced algebra is the prerequisite for every other math class. So that would be the default graduation requirement for all the other kids that would need to graduate. Does that help?
I understand what you're saying, and I get that, but my concern is at some point, the board, at some point, thought that advanced algebra was a important thing to graduate. And because we're, with that policy being in place, we're already in excess of the Illinois graduation requirement. So the board, at some point in time, when this policy was adopted, thought that advanced algebra was an important prerequisite. And now today, we're saying, we don't think it is. And I'm just trying to understand why it's no longer an important prerequisite to graduate.
At the point where we were looking at this, and again, I'd have to go back and look at everything, but from memory, again, we were looking to really strengthen our students' math skills, and we made a really big change where we no longer had those consumer or general math classes for students to take. And so it was, everybody started in algebra. Exactly why, for the reasons Ms. Lynn shared, that starting in algebra, that's the goal, that's still the goal for students to be starting in algebra in high school. We're just faced with the issue of making sure we're meeting where the kids are at with some of the dips we've seen. Because, we, like Diane said, we were almost at 60% of our students at or above benchmark. And now, in 2 short years after that, we're at 22% with the same test. And so that's where we're concerned that there's going to be several years that students might be coming in deficient because of COVID, because regardless of where the remote happened, there could be some issues for students. So again, I think Diane said this isn't necessarily something that we would want to do forever, but we think it's something that could have an impact now. And even though it's a small number of kids, we think it's a small number of kids that'll benefit, so we have a place to ensure they can be successful. And they could still get to advanced algebra. They could. And that would be a hope. But again, we'd look at their college and career aspirations to determine where we would guide them. That's the best answer I have.
I think you answered one important question that I had, was about how long? You said not forever. So did you guys have an idea or a timeline thought out? 5 years?
I think we would want to look at the success rate every year. Because one of the things we talked about is, right now, many of these kids are struggling and or failing their double block class and then having to go back into another double block class the next year. So then they're in double block math forever. And we want to measure make sure that kids aren't dropping out because they're not meeting their math credits. So this is something we would look at on an annual basis. But I think with anything, probably 2 to 3 years to see if something's working, but annually as well.
I have a question. How many students did our excellent math interventionists work with this past semester with all that data?
Here, I can go back.
68 and
49 or
49.
At some point, I can find like a total was 68. So some of those students stayed like the whole semester, some came in at the end, we were trying to improve their grades for passing. So they all varied on like how many days they necessarily attended, but a total of 68 throughout the semester.
So of these kids, what portion of these kids are in that 3%?
They wouldn't have been because they were all in Algebra 1 single block. Isn't that what you said?
A few of my students I did take from block classes because at the beginning I was just, taking some, but most were like 98%.
So these are all algebra single block?
Most of them, yes.
So, most of them?
Geometry and
Well,
Oh, yeah, so this is a single block class, not the double block.
Right.
So would the same interventions in a double block reel those 3% of kids that we're looking at, giving them those interventions of having the smaller class instruction like these kids had, would that be an intervention that'd be more effective than developing a new course that lowers the grade level, or it's not putting them at grade level? I have a real,
No, I completely
Thank you,
understand where you're
Kristen.
going from. So what you're saying is that, like, so here are the kids that were at that fall and winter benchmark.
Yes.
In regards to that. So the math interventionists really didn't focus in on double block because we felt like they're already receiving an intervention. The students in algebra were. So what you're saying, what I think I hear you saying is that we would push in the same interventions that the Algebra 1 teacher did. But they're working in an environment of like 12 kids.
that's my point. So if we got 12 kids that you're working with in the double block that got that small group attention,
Right.
you're going to get different results. Because, I mean, we're talking about 80 kids here, or 100 kids at Central, right? And I just from all the research I know about mathematics, I haven't seen anything that says, yeah, let's lower the grade standard and these kids are going to get to where they need to be. It's always keep them at grade level and put in interventions to bring them up to grade level. And the data shows that, you know, I've been told that, I don't have the data that I could quote it from, but I've been told that, you know, if the kids don't have their multiplication facts and addition facts memorized by 6th grade, they're never going to. So my then concern is we're having these courses that we're developing. We want to develop these foundational skills, and no matter how much we push them at this point, are they going to learn it, or is it better to put in different interventions into place to get them to that Algebra 1 level? And then my other concern, to back off of that, is like what teachers are going to be teaching this, because a lot of times we put like our new teachers or not our best quality teachers with our most struggling students. And I've seen it, I've heard it, and so then what teachers exactly are going to be teaching our most at-risk group of kids?
So I think the first one, I think that's, that goes into staffing. If you're, you know, that's the conversations with Dr. Guzman and Dr. Hampton and about staffing, because if what you're saying is to have smaller class sizes similar to what the math instructional, or the interventionists are at, like, that would impact our staffing numbers.
In a large way, and the other thing I would be concerned about is we have unfilled math positions that we've had all year. So there's a concern with staffing at that. So there's a lot of areas that are an obstacle, but one thing that I would say is our teachers have been putting in interventions with their students, and we're always looking to get better, but they've been doing that. And with a growing number of kids, this is an area and a group of students that we feel like we could better meet their needs.
But to complement what we've been doing in math with the new Carnegie curriculum, it shows that it's working. Because if you see the green, we're starting to see the green where our students are at benchmark in our core classes, not just our honors classes. And you're seeing more students at or above compared to on-watch intervention and urgent intervention. So spending that first year with our math teachers in Algebra 1 and Algebra 1 double block is working. Remember that Carnegie curriculum is very rigorous in regards to the reading skills of our students. So there's a lot of reading, there's a lot of writing, there's a lot of problem solving. That's why we went with it, because it's not just about memorization, but it's application of their math skills. So we are seeing growth as our, these are our sophomores who were our first group to go through the Carnegie curriculum. And then you can see West Campus, again, our students' average scores, they're already at benchmark, growth at the fall and winter. So we are seeing growth in all areas, but this is great for us because this is showing us that it's, that adoption and working with our students is paying off in the classroom. Here's our 11th grade students. So these students have not had the Carnegie curriculum. They're still receiving our traditional algebra curriculum, but yet they are still growing. But if you look at the numbers, our geometry students are scoring higher compared to our advanced algebra students because of the work that our math teachers have done. So we should see this again next school year when we roll this out in our advanced algebra classes. And here's West Campus, 11th grade. Again, you're seeing growth in all areas. So that's math. We set a goal for testing more students, and we did that. I really appreciate all the help with Mrs. McMorris and all the math teachers. We have some district level goals in regards to looking at the data, having the math interventionists using the data and working with the teachers, and then starting to push that into our MTSS teams as they start rolling out their interventions as they work with AIR. Questions on math outside of the new course? And everybody brought up valid questions and concerns, and I really appreciate it. We had a lot of that too as a team with the math teachers and other areas.
I have a question. With your math grading, I know some districts are different, are going more standard-based grading, and I know this is completely different, but it does tie into like numbers of passing and not passing. What is your grading?
So,
how do you grade in mathematics right now on this scale?
so the only grades that go in the summative category for math are their unit assessments.
So can zeros be put in there, or?
So, yes.
Okay.
So if a student doesn't take the test, it's a missing, if they're absent. But when they set up their summative category, which is 80% of a student's grade, it is solely based on the assessments, the district assessments, based on those units that we give throughout the semester.
Everything else is 20%?
Yes.
And so if a kid gets a 20% on that test, that 20% is put into the grade?
Right now, we're asking teachers to put in 50%,
Okay.
just to hold the students afloat.
Okay.
But yes.
It's a 0 if they don't take it at all.
And 50 if they do?
Yeah, and they're also encouraged to work with students to remediate and retest.
Okay.
So now I'm going to take us into reading. Reading's going to look a little different than math. Mr. Packney is here in the audience to our English curriculum director to answer any questions as well. Again, 34 questions. The test adapts. It tests multiple areas, so the students' knowledge and skills in regards to words, comprehension, analyzing text, understanding author's craft, and analyzing argument and evaluating text. So the same format is our math, and here is 9th grade students overall, 10th, 11th, 12th, their fall and winter scale scores, and their growth. I want to point out that, like, when I say all of this, this is all students. When I break it down by course, it's only specific courses that I'm sharing. So some of this data could be like our reading classes, or our off-semester block classes, or our gap classes. Also, we have literacy 1 and 2 at both campuses. The literacy program, which is an intervention for our students identified through the PSAT test and teacher recommendations from
8th grade or freshman year, focuses on students' ability to read, and we leverage Achieve 3000 this year to measure their growth goals. So here's an overall Central Campus and West Campus. I want to point out that to exit, the exit criteria on literacy is a 1080. So really, if you look at their fall testing windows, in spring, fall, and spring, our students do grow, but they're still struggling to meet, and the 1080 is at the 10th grade level. So this is where our students come in. Literacy 1 would be freshmen.
Literacy 2 is the sophomores?
And then I set up the data, again, the same as math. What you're going to see is that most of the areas that we are meeting benchmark are in our honors classes. What you'll also see is that at the Central Campus, many of our students will be on this side of the graph needing urgent interventions. You have to remember the language lists our students in our ELL bilingual program. This is one area that Mr. Hackney and I talked about possibly offering our students in those courses the test in Spanish next year. Again, here are our benchmarks, 925 and 952. But a lot of our students at Central, you'll see this pattern, are at the urgent intervention. And I just want to point out to the board, this is our second year using this data for reading. We've always used it for math. We started it last year because of COVID and wanting to know where our kids are. And it's telling us where they are. And we're going to put a plan together to respond to that data. Here's West Campus. Again, students meeting the benchmark are in our honors classes. 10th grade. Both campuses.
Hey, Diane.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm looking at the 10th grade for Central, and both the honors and English 2 dropped. Is there, do we know why that happened? Because if, and I'm not trying to compare, but West Campus didn't.
So Central Campus, I don't know why. That is something that we're digging into with Mr. Hackney and his ILT. Again, this is an average of students. There really isn't a big discrepancy in our testing numbers. So, Mrs. Stiff, I don't know if that's something I can look into for you. We can dig into that. Sean, if you...
Yeah, just real quick, just to point out, and this is across the board, we're not talking about our honors classes. So English 2, for example, here, and even our instructional English 2, just as an example here, the benchmark for the fall is 981, and as you can see, 1004 for the winter, which means we're not close yet to meeting it, even with the fall and winter scores compared here. So there's work to do. So we see the drop from fall to winter here in this example. Our ILT for English is really digging in, trying to figure out exactly what we're doing with reading in the curriculum and how we can go deeper with reading instead of having such a wide approach to reading. So this is really just indicative of work that we need to do.
Central Campus, 7th graders. 7th grade at West. I want to point out that, again, some of our numbers are down here from fall to winter because of just having subs in the classrooms for teachers that are out on leave. So that's why we have that discrepancy there. And then 12th grade.
Can I stop you there?
Yes.
Are we having a big drop off because we have subs there? It's what? I know we say we Because we have subs there, so is the big drop-off is because we have subs? Is the curriculum is not keeping them there? What is it? I mean,
I think that what I'm pointing out, Mr. Edmund, is the testing numbers. So like in the fall, we tested 761, in the winter, we were at 623.
Okay.
So not all students got tested, and part of that is because we had subs in the classrooms who were just like, we lost communication, or we weren't communicating to them, or in regards to the kids not taking the tests.
All right, okay. That just, it seems strange.
But that
to me.
does impact student learning
Okay.
as well,
Okay,
and then 12th grade.
okay.
As Mr. Hackney said, if you see the drop here with AP English and rhetoric, I wanted to talk to rhetoric because Mr. Hackney and I found out that some of our students were not placed correctly in our rhetoric classes. We used the wrong placement information for JJC, so we have students in there that are taking this rhetoric class that would be more successful in English 4, but we kept them in rhetoric 101 because it was our mistake for placement. So that's where you see this negative drop.
Can I say something too?
Please.
My biggest concern, you know, when we talk in the math, if the kids can't read, don't we need to really be concentrating more on that part?
I
To
think
me,
it's both. Like, you
I
need
know
to read,
both,
yeah.
But, you know, I can understand the foundational math. I can understand it because if you don't have it, you gotta have a foundation to build on to get where you need to go. You can have that there and then build up to what you need to do, but then we're expecting kids to know something they've never known. So you gotta give them a foundation to get them to where they need to know. So it seems strange to me that we're gonna you know, I hear people say, just put this there and then just put all the measurements that we need to put them to get them there. I say, no, give them the foundation because they might not never had learned them or never given to them.
Right,
But
and,
if they don't know how to read,
right. No, we're seeing that because if you went back to our literacy slide, just the
can't do
word,
the word problems.
so like
And I have problem with word problems and I can read.
630 Lexile, so, and they need to be at a 10 over 1,000. So that's an area that Mr. Hackney and I discussed. He's working with his ILT. Right now, the English curriculum is very robust with writing. And what we're want to do is what we recognize we have to do based on the data is that we have to make sure that it's a balance between reading, writing, speaking, and listening, so that our students are having those experiences, not just writing, but reading and then responding to that reading through writing. So that's one area that we're working on. And also to recognize that students, in order for students to read to learn, they have to know how to learn how to read. So like, in order for them to build that comprehension, when they do read a text, a complex text, or those word problems in math, they have to know how to read first. So we have a lot of work to do. We're grateful that we're using this data for our second year, and we're going to respond to it, because you know I'm committed to doing that. I'm working with the curriculum directors on that, and we have a plan in place, and you know I'm going to do it.
I have another question statement. So I'm listening to you talk about these reading scores, and then you say Carnegie, and I do know the Carnegie curriculum is very reading based. So how much of our reading skills are affecting our math scores, and then we're developing a new math course with these reading scores. And so to me, like well, you could probably already tell how I feel about the math course, but then we're having this reading that's affecting their math scores. And I understand that they're still at that 5th grade level, but if you can't read, and what accommodations are being made for the reading and the mathematics, and are we, another way to address it, are the mathematics teachers getting how to teach the reading in the math class? Because a lot of math teachers don't know how to teach reading and mathematics. And so I'm seeing these reading scores, and then I go back to what you say about Carnegie and the math score, and then wanting to develop a course to make up for the lack of math scores, that also we have a curriculum that's based on reading. I just.
It's all interconnected.
It
There's
is
no
all
other
interconnected, so
connection.
now I'm
It
like,
is all
okay,
interconnected.
here it is, but how much of this reading is impacting the math? And I don't know. That was just my statement that I'm making.
Thank you.
We have the literacy class. We do not have reading interventionists right now.
And then has any instruction been given to the math teachers on how to teach reading and mathematics?
I would say no.
Not specifically, however, we have worked with Carnegie on reading strategies, and so when we have our initial training for Carnegie, we do have some instruction there, but Sean and I have been talking about partnering in regards to working with some of the reading teachers in the environment. So it's on the burner.
Okay.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. But what I appreciate about this district and just working with Dr. Guzman and educational services is that we use data, we look at data, we respond to it, we acknowledge where we are right now, and we move forward from it. So you have my commitment that when we present in the spring, we'll have a more robust plan in regards to what we need to do for next school year and moving forward. And to wrap it up, let's talk about state assessments, all right? Just to give you some information, if parents ask you in the community, second semester is very heavy with state assessments. We've already started access testing. All our 9th through 12th graders, these are students that have been identified as ELL, whether they're receiving services or not. So we've started that testing. The SAT with essay is required for our grade 11 students. We'll be giving that in April, and they have to take the essay part. Same with the Illinois State or Illinois Science Assessment, that's for grade 11, and we'll be giving that week. So the week of, I think, April 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, we're gonna be giving a lot of assessments. The PSAT, we're required by the state of Illinois to give to grade 10, and the PSAT we're required to give to grade 9. And then students that are in grade 11 that do not qualified to take the SAT. We give them the dynamic learning maps in reading, math, and science. And so that, like, second semester is very heavy with state assessments. I just wanted to give you that overview, if you get any questions from the community. I think we had a lot of questions. Any other questions for me? All right. Thank you.
And I
Thank
know
you.
that you've had a lot going on. We
Thank you.
appreciate
Thanks.
Sharing the information. So our next presentation, are there any other questions? I don't want to cut anybody off. I'm sorry. Our next presentation is Mental Health and Substance Abuse Resources presentation. And we have Dr. Amana Ellis-Bowen and Mr. Brett Markham. And I think this is a good example, too, of looking at what some of our other issues are that get in the way of students accessing our academic program and trying to provide them with additional supports.
Good evening, everyone.
I turned the microphone off.
I turned it, can you hear me okay? All right. I don't want to speak for Dr. Ellis-Bowen, but I'm glad I get a chance to stand, and I feel bad for you all. So we'll try to be succinct, but feel free to ask any questions that you have. So Dr. Guzman gave you the title of the presentation. I know it's in your packet. And we've been talking about this all year, how the pandemic has impacted the mental, emotional, and behavioral health of our students. And so we have some requests. I think we started back in September, meeting with outside partners, trying to find resources to bring to our students. And in full disclosure, it's taken us this long to find things that are viable and that we can plug into our system without asking more of our staff. But we did want to give you some data points to kind of share why this is important that we address this in this way, in a strategic way. So I gave you some data points from first semester. Just for comparison, our office discipline referrals for substance abuse in first semester, 147, we had 65 from the pre-pandemic year, so more than doubled. We implemented a new structure, a new teaming structure through our MTSS process where our counselors, deans, and social workers are collaborating on a more regular basis because we anticipated referrals to behavioral health teams to be higher. And that, I think the 503 conversations about students shows that was needed. Our BHT referrals are on par with a normal year, right? So if we didn't have that triangle team, those teams would have been, they already meet for 2 to 3 hours a week. Those meetings would have been very long, okay? So, and I think it's important to point out here that the interventions that are needed by students through those meetings, through those database conversations, are heavily individualized, right? So we have a system of support groups and intervention groups that can be effective for many students. However, in talking to our staff and our BHT leads especially, the needs are very individualized. So they need individual counseling and supports, right? Because every student's trauma is manifesting differently. Some other data points for comparison. In first semester, we track reports of suicidal ideation, right, that we investigate. In the 18-19 school year, the fall of 2018, we had 37. Fall of 2019, we had 36. This first semester, we had 73. Okay, so a significant need. And then also, I know you get all these emails, but in the aggregate, we had 58 threat assessments completed on students. So just wanted to provide you with some data points on the level of need that our students have.
All right, so good evening again. I am super excited to continue with augmenting our mental health and social emotional services within the district. Even before the pandemic, when we have been talking about mental health within JTHS, we have always focused on those whole child indicators, looking at making sure our students are healthy, they're safe, they're engaged, they're supported and challenged. And we all know that in order for our students to feel that way, they need to be emotionally supported and services provided to those students. So when we started in September looking at different services that we can provide, we wanted to make sure that we continue with making sure that services were comprehensive as well as accessible by our parents as well as our students. Historically, what we have learned from offering mental health as well as social emotional services is that we also need to make sure that they have a lot of options or they are layered so that we can provide more personalized, individualized services. So when we were looking at even our supports for substance abuse, we, after having conversations with a variety of different partnerships, one of the things that kept coming out was not only making sure that we had the counseling and the therapy, but also looking at those psychosocial assessments so that we can look at the root cause of why the students are engaging in abusing substances. So in front of you, we have tiered supports that hopefully will continue to not only augment our mental health supports, but then also continue to provide those supports that our community needs. So at the tier 1, we have Care Solace. This will be a program that could be utilized by every student within the district. This service will allow parents as well as students, as well as staff, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide, access to local providers based on a variety of different interests as well as needs. The next layer would be the Rethink Program, which is a program sponsored by or in partnership with Linden Oaks. This would be a targeted program for students who we have identified with substance abuse that will provide education as well as screening. And it would be provided for students through groups as well as there is also a parent component as well too. The last part of this triangle will be Restoring the Spirit, which I am also excited about because it is a community-based organization with ties to not only our district, but District 86. And Restoring the Spirit would begin to provide individual mental health services as well as assessments for those students that we have identified through substance abuse, as well as some other mental health concerns within our district. Oh, you left it. I thought you had it. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Care Solace. All right, so Care Solace is a service provider that matches students, staff, and families with, as I stated earlier, verified local service providers. What they do is they assist parents with identifying these local service providers, as well as staying with them until that appointment is made, as well as with follow-up care. Care Solace was established in 2017 in California. They offer 24/7, 365 days availability. So our parents, our staff, our students will have access to them year-round. They also have worked locally with Valley View 365, as well as with Forest Park District 91. As I stated in the previous slide, this would be a Tier 1 support for our students. This will also be a great benefit if we were to receive your approval and recommendation for this, because our staff will be able to access this program as well too. And we, through research, through conversations, through data, through social media, we know that our teachers would benefit from this due to the high needs of stress in the classroom, at home, as well as with dealing with the mental health and social emotional concerns, whether it be related to COVID-19 or outside personal concerns. So, Care Solace, what would this look like? So, if the first step would be a staff member identifying, working with the student and seeing, oh, you would benefit from seeing a mental health provider outside of the school. That staff member, whether it be a counselor or a social worker, will have that conversation with the student and identify the needs. Once that occurs, then that staff member will call the parents, have a conversation with the parents, and seek consent from the parents to provide that information to Care Solace. If a consent is sought and given, then, if a consent is given, then what happens is that staff member then reaches out to Care Solace, provides Care Solace with the parent and family information, as well as the identified student needs. From that point, a care companion comes in. A care companion is a service provider through Care Solace, and they take on the family. They make that phone call to the family, determine the type of need they need, as well as what their assistance, the level of assistance needed in navigating the program. So it could be guiding the parent on the actual system, which is all on the web, and or doing it on behalf of the parent. They work with the parents to identify local verified providers in a number of areas based on the parent's medical insurance, based on language, based on gender. It could be also based on focus of the practice of the provider, amongst some other areas that parents can select. Once that is done, there are a number of providers that the parents could choose from. The parents would choose that provider. Care Solace will work with the parent and the provider to schedule their first session. Care Solace takes care of all the reminders, all of the updates, all of the information before as well as after the session. With Care Solace, there wouldn't be included in the cost would be the training and onboarding, as well as there's no upfront technology needed in order for that data sharing. With Carosalis, parents, for our students, we would be able to collect data unless the families choose to go anonymous. For our staff, if they choose to use Carosalis, we would not be able to collect data because all staff members would be anonymous because of health, privacy concerns and legislation. Last but not least, Carosalis and the Care Companions will also do follow-up with the students as well as with the initial staff member that made the initial recommendation.
Just one thing I wanted to add about Carosalis, because one of the questions that if you don't communicate with our social workers and counselors regularly that might come up is, isn't that something that our staff can do? Can't they just have a list of resources in the community that we hand to parents? The benefit of Carosalis is that it takes the follow-up work out of the hands of our staff and frees them up to work directly with students, right? So this is a resource that could support families throughout that process and free up time for our staff to work more directly with students. So that's I just want to add that as well.
Brett,
yeah.
currently too, one of the concerns I've heard from parents as well as staff members is there's a lot of need right now, and it's taking sometimes a month or longer to get a session or to set an appointment. And I did call over to Valley View to see how it's going, and they're very happy with it. And I know in your data it showed too, but they really try and do that like within 2 weeks, which would be a huge benefit to some of our families right now in trying to navigate that, because you have someone potentially in crisis and you have a need and you can't find help. And that's something that I know I've heard of numerous times. So that's a benefit that Valley View has said, and they've said that they've had a growing need this year.
A month was generous, I think.
Yes.
I was like, wow, that's so impressive to have, be able to get in within 2 weeks. So I saw that, and that
Yeah.
piece really stuck out to me.
And because the national average, I believe, and you may know better than I do, Ms. Greer-Newman, but I believe it's 12 weeks to get from scheduling to being in a session for your mental health appointment. And the way that Carosalis accomplishes that is they essentially have a network of all of the mental health providers in the state of Illinois, including access through Medicare and Medicaid. And so they just call and they try to find the places that are within the range the family can access, and they try to work with the families to get there the quickest, right? So that's how they accomplish that.
I was actually going to say, if we have complaints that it took them longer, we have certain community agencies right now that are up to 2 years. I've had clients on waiting lists since summer, and they're, like, just last week, they're still number 85 to get in for follow-up care after they're done with our center. And again, there's centers like mine, we only take a very specific clientele, and that is it. So that, I mean, even if they can do it within 3 or 4 months, I'd be impressed at this point. And especially with somebody licensed, so I think that's a big deal. And the other component is for follow-up. That's one of the biggest barriers is we have clients sometimes and families, they're so overwhelmed outside of the counselor that if they can just get an appointment date within a couple months, if they can just set that and someone's gonna follow up with them, that's huge. That's amazing, really.
We actually had two, like tier 1 resources, we'll call them, that we vetted, and we brought them in to present to our staff. And one of the things that they shared from Carosalis is that they are persistent, right? So when a family allows us to track the data, one of the things they track is frequency of communication, how many communications, and they'll share how long it took to get in contact with the families. And they shared that a lot of times it's because when a family is using Carosalis, it's because they're in crisis, and so they need that level of persistence and follow-up support to get into the care that they need. So that's, again, another thing that we don't often talk about things that we can take off the plates of our staff. This is something that follow-up communication with families is something that we can do for our counselors and social workers. So the next resource that we want to talk about is through Linden Oaks. Just a little bit of background information on Linden Oaks. This is a behavioral health center in the area. We've worked with them before. We brought them in to do some youth mental health first aid training for our counselors and social workers early in the year, just how to support students who are in crisis. They also work with students who are in need of hospitalization. They have multiple locations in the area. And this program is something that we found through research with Plainfield District 202. They've used it for a few years successfully with their high school students, and it comes highly recommended from them. In terms of what the Rethink program looks like, it's targeted towards students with a first-time substance abuse offense, right? So I talked about those 147 substance abuse referrals. All of the students who committed that offense once would be eligible to complete this program. It's comprised of 3 online learning modules, so it's pretty much an educational opportunity to learn about what substance abuse or substance use does to your brain and your development and how that can impact your future. We're proposing that students will complete it in our intensive student support services room, or what we've historically called ISS, which we've revamped this year. It's designed more to be a support and intervention for students this year, and this would be a good fit within that structure. It also includes at the end an addiction screener. So it would require parent consent to be able to participate in this program, and we would complete that through the meeting with the parents when they're talking about the discipline, right? It would be an option. So we have this option to provide an intervention for your child that we think would really benefit them, and that would happen in lieu of an out-of-school suspension. So that really works towards our goal of decreasing exclusionary discipline for minor or non-safety and security offenses, right? We wouldn't use this for distribution. It would be purely substance abuse or possession, right? And then the process of Rethink would conclude with a family in-person session with the parents. We would utilize our internal staff. We have a few staff members who have a background in mental health counseling and substance abuse, and those 2 individuals are willing to be trained by Linden Oaks to provide that to our families in our community.
Hey, Brett, can you tell us what the criteria is for Rethink?
The criteria to participate?
Yeah.
So any student who commits a substance abuse offense in school would automatically qualify as to have the option in lieu of an exclusionary discipline consequence. And then, if we had other students who come forward or who we identify through conversations that they're struggling with substances, they would also be eligible to complete this as an intervention.
Okay, so even if it's one student with multiple?
So it's only for a first-time offense, right? Because this is very, if a student is habitually using substances, right, this intervention is not in-depth enough to change that behavior, right? It's really targeted towards, you brought your vape to school and you were in the bathroom, or you've all heard the stories from staff this year about what students do. For our the next resource that Dr. Ellis-Bowen is going to speak to is targeted more towards kids who have multiple substance abuse offenses, who we identify through screeners need a more in-depth assessment. And she'll talk about this, but one of the themes that came out of our conversations with the experts is that most often a student whose behavior is manifesting in substance abuse has some other root mental health cause that they're just self-medicating through marijuana, prescription drugs, etc.
I know I have experience in working with Linden Oaks, and one of the barriers that our families experience, because there's no location near Joliet, is transportation.
Yeah.
So is that a barrier for us when dealing with Linden Oaks?
Great question. In this program, it's not, because all of our services for this program are going to be provided in our district, right? So the online learning modules happen in the school during the school day. The in-person parent session, one of the barriers initially for working with them was that they didn't have the staff or the structure to meet our need. And so we worked with them to be able to have our staff who have the background provided in our community.
And just to give you some historical background, when we had our former two partnerships that provided substance abuse services for our students, that was a barrier, access for our families, because they wanted, in order to receive that counseling or that therapy, they wanted our families to travel. And so we had to go back and engage in conversations and say, this is not working for our families, and we need something in-house. And then with our last partner, we actually came to where we were actually able to hold in-person with services within our district, but then we went into stay-at-home due to COVID. So we were only able to provide that for one semester. So it was important for us as we entered into the conversations with everybody that it was accessible for our parents as well as our students.
I would just add that the other barrier with that provider was that, you know, they vetted based not just on need, but also insurance. And so that caused us some concerns relating to equity and access, and we think this will help us alleviate that concern.
Okay. So as you brought up, now we are looking at targeting our students who have multiple offenses or may have some habitual behaviors that are manifesting, that are impacting them in academic as well as at home. And so we entered into conversations with Restoring the Spirit. Again, this is a community-based mental health agency. It was established in 2012 by Dr. Melinda Myers. She first started Restoring the Spirit in Georgia, and after seeing the success in Georgia, decided to come back home and open a facility here right in her home of Joliet, where her brother, Darren Meyer, oversees the services as well as the office here in Joliet. They're both Central alumni, and they are very proud of that, and very proud to begin to have these conversations with us as a district. So, Restoring the Spirit has 6 licensed clinicians, 7 master level clinicians, and 3 rehabilitative support associates. They have had extensive partnerships with One Hope United Foster Care, as well as Will County Juvenile Probation. However, what got us excited about this partnership is they currently have a partnership with District 86, where they are currently offering comprehensive mental health services to the students in our Cinder School district, which will provide that continuation of services for our students as they transition into our district. Restoring the Spirit, again, when we're talking about looking at that root cause and just not throwing services at students, they will be providing the psychosocial assessments along as we have consent from the parents. And in addition to that, they will also be providing therapy as well as counseling for our students. And on an as-needed basis, they'll also provide some therapy, family therapy sessions with the parents as well as the students. So the referral process would be multiple or severe substance abuse referrals, and then also BHT, our behavioral health team referrals as well too, for the students that would go and see our clinicians from Restoring the Spirit. In addition to that, in conversations with our JTHS staff, one of the things that they brought up was not only the need for individual supports for substance abuse, but looking at individual supports to assist within our schools for other mental health concerns. And so we spoke to them about expanding that partnership to include that, as well as we also have a number of students due to the pandemic and staffing concerns that are outplaced without any type of social, emotional, and mental health supports, which they need, as well as it is specified within their IEP. And so they have also agreed to provide services to those students as well.
I keep adding things to Dr. Oswald, but one other benefit to working with Restoring the Spirit is if you read our discipline policy related to substance abuse, one of the things that's in there that we've been flexible on is the need for that psychosocial assessment before the students return, so that we can get them the support they need. This would allow us to meet that policy language as well. So just wanted to add that. Yes.
Is insurance a barrier with
So with Restoring the Spirit, we're gonna get into the cost here, but no, because we would be funding that through some of our grants. That's the request that we're making, that's the goal. So, yes.
Are you gonna go into funding for everything right now?
Yes, I'm gonna talk about funding for all.
1 second, sorry.
Yep.
If they're gonna be addressing, substance abuse, could you just figure these out and let us know? I wanted to know out of the licensed staff, how many are LCPCs and how many are LCSWs?
Okay,
LCPCs and LCSWs.
yep,
And not just interns and not just LSWs and not just LCPs.
yep.
I'd like to know what happened with their DCFS contract 2 years ago in 2019 and why they closed down and then reopened. I would like to know what exactly rehabilitative, clinicians means. I would like to know how many students in District 86 have successfully terminated from this program, started and ended. And then when they talk about, I know they do in-home and at-school services. Again, with that, how many sessions does that usually take from start to finish? And then what kind of certifications do those LCSWs and LCPCs have to address trauma? Like, do they have EMDR certifications? Do they have TFCBT, trauma informed? Are they CCTPs? All of those questions would be helpful to know. And, sorry, how many bilingual staff out of all of them? Thank you.
Dr. Ellis is taking very, very thorough notes here, so we can definitely look into all that. And I don't wanna lie to you, we don't have all those answers right now, right? But, great questions.
Oh, I'm sorry, one more.
Yeah.
What is their turnover rate? Like, what's their longest?
For their staff?
For their staff, or what is their shortest? What is their median staff?
All right. Any other questions before I go into costs and?
Thank you.
Yeah, no, definitely, thank you. So, in terms of Care Solace, which is that Tier 1 support, we're proposing and requesting the opportunity to use our American Rescue Plan Act funds to enter into an agreement with them from February of 2022 through June of 2023. So that would give us the rest of this semester, as well as the subsequent school year. The cost for that entire time period is $35,233. Again, that's a one-time cost out of the American Rescue Plan. For the Rethink Program, again, we're hoping to use the American Rescue Plan Act funds. The contract is the same length of time, so the rest of second semester and then the subsequent school year. The cost for all of the materials and the initial training of our internal staff is $5,350, and then we estimated if our staff is gonna provide the in-person follow-up sessions, we would need to pay them at the contractual rate, and so we estimate that to be around $2,300. So that total cost is around $7,600, so not substantial. And then Restoring the Spirit is,
So, Restoring the Spirit will be funded out of multiple funding sources, one being IDEA. And so now, in addition to IDEA Fund B, we also have IDEA ARP as well too, that will allow us to fund this. We also have McKinney-Vento ARP, because we would be looking at services for our students and families that are homeless, in addition to our ARP for our general education students. We would be looking at the services right now through May 2022. And then, like anything that we do in Joliet, we would do a progress monitoring and looking at the evaluation of services. And then looking forward to put forth another contract if we've seen some substantial gains. And then JTHS will pay $86 per hour as they work with each of our families.
So it would be on an as-appointment basis, right? We are proposing for Restoring the Spirit that it's a shorter-term commitment because we want to vet it. We want to, really it's about alleviating the burden on our current staff, right? And we talked about when they submit bills, also submitting follow-up information about the families. We would have a release of information with the family to monitor that as well. So.
And also too, they'll be part of that BHT, and then for our behavioral health teams, they meet with all of our community partners monthly, in which there is criteria for looking at how they're working with our kids, the progress, as well as the success of that partnership as well too.
And the benefit also is that it's on an as-used basis. So if we get a month into it, it's not working, it's not like the others where we signed a contract, right? We would just cease using them. Any other questions? I know you were all asking questions throughout, but happy to answer any other questions you have.
I just want to say thank you for putting all this hard work in. It's a really challenging time across the board for school districts, for agencies, meaning children. And so this is really important. And just the idea that we put all these curriculums in Kids Matter, and I think it's important that you're thinking of students and self-care. We even have police departments right now who feel that their police officers are being overwhelmed with trauma, and they're differentiating their staff, and they're also short, and we're all short. So I think this is really important to try to get care to everybody, and I'm glad that you included staff in this because they're also experiencing trauma. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. And our last presentation is facility plan update. Dr. Hampton.
Hello to everyone.
Hello.
I think it's on now, yeah. So each year, normally the facilities report is presented to the board in the latter part of spring. So normally it's April or May, and this report is normally presented by the Director of Buildings and Grounds. So as we know, Joe Lopez retired and Mr. Brian Pachesney was hired. And the reason that we're presenting now is no different than what we presented over the past year, especially over the past 6 months to the Board of Education in regards to just supply chain, purchasing of equipment, being able to place orders a lot earlier, so potentially that we can have equipment for projects we need to complete during the summer. And so with this report here, I'll do my best to do a good job like Joe would do in the past. And we work hand in hand, so I do know and I'm familiar with everything that happens here. So this is an overall high picture level of all of the projects associated with our facilities. So this doesn't include the preventive maintenance, summer projects and things that we may do in terms of cleaning, preventive maintenance in the summer, winter, and spring. So with this one here, so each year we have annual Regional Office of Education inspections. So that's required by state code. And we do have a person that comes out, inspects our building. They have a checklist. If there are any deficiencies on the inspection report, we must complete it within a 6-month period. I am happy to report, and I know Joe has reported this in the past, we have over 300,000 square feet of in each campus. And this past report, we had 3 deficiencies, which is significant in regards to the magnitude and the square footage of our campuses. And so we work very hard. Our staff work very hard, including all the staff in the building, because we do know when those inspections are occurring, and we work hard with the staff to make sure that they understand even the littlest things that can be considered a deficiency in our buildings. We have annual state fire marshal inspections, annual fire systems testing, annual fire extinguishers inspections, kitchen fire suppression inspection, annual indoor air quality testing. So even before the pandemic, we had annual indoor air quality testing of our buildings. Annual bleacher and basketball hoist inspections, those are required. Backflow preventive inspections. So that's dealing with our plumbing system. So we have to ensure that the proper flow of our plumbing system is occurring versus some type of leakage or stoppage that may cause contamination within our plumbing system. And then, of course, our environmental management. In regards to the buildings and grounds operations, so we have custodial and maintenance operations, building service requests, HVAC preventive maintenance, building usage support, and custodial support. And again here, summer work and site work in the summer, winter operations, which is snow removal, ground operations, athletic activity support, and grounds maintenance in regards to athletics. Weekend building coverage. So we also have what we call custodial watchmen. Their main purpose is essentially the midnight shift, and they are eyes and ears to our buildings so that if something is occurring within our buildings, they know the proper protocol to either call heating operators, maybe the building supervisors, or potentially it could be the director. And I also added just the COVID-19 mitigation measures because we're still in that environment. And just kind of want to read exactly what we've done. And as a board, we did bring this forth. Central and West classroom social distancing, wall signage, floor markings, procurement of PPE, disinfectant and associated materials, face shields, face masks, goggles, safety glasses, nitro gloves, hand sanitizer, touchless water fountains, and I'll come back to that. Acrylic barriers, we know we added those in the cafeterias. We also added 4 additional custodial staff. Just through the ESSER funds and ARC funds, we were able to fund the additional 4 custodial personnel to start now, and they'll be funded through the grant for the next 3 years, and then absorbed through our operations come year 4. And then, of course, ongoing cleaning measures. But I'll go back to the touchless water fountains. We're about 75% completed at West and about 60% completed at Central. When we talk about touchless water fountains, it takes about 5 hours to change out one. So it's time. There's a time commitment to that, and so with students back in the building, it takes a little bit longer. We also are going touchless in all of our bathrooms, and those are about 80% complete. So we're hoping to be completed with those by spring in regards to the touchless water fountains, and they're also paid through our ESSER funds. That's actually one of the initiatives through the pandemic in terms of health and safety measures. So now I want to get into the larger capital projects, and I'm going to start with West. And where you see where it just says improvements, we're talking about the current up to now, right, year to date. So last year, Meadows Lab was renovated at both campuses. We purchased new equipment. The majority of that equipment was was purchased through the Innovative Grant, which was provided by the state, $150,000. And you'll hear that, that term again as we move through the next couple of years because it was a 3-year commitment, $150,000 per year. Auditorium renovations, just about complete. Should have been completed back in October. However, due to the pandemic and the supply chain, just everything was delayed. Central is complete. There's a few lighting fixtures that need to be purchased and delivered. West Auditorium is scheduled to be completed the second week in February. So everything is now here except for a few lighting fixtures. So that will be done here shortly. The bipolar ionization, we spoke with the board about that project. That's complete. The makeup air units for the CTE program, that's complete. The outdoor air quality test and balancing outside airflow, again, that's associated with the pandemic to increase the airflow within our campuses. It's actually complete at both campuses, but we're starting with the West Campus. Central improvements, you'll hear some of the same things. Auditorium renovation, the bipolar ionization, the makeup air unit for CTE, the outdoor air quality test and balance of outside airflow. We just added here with the completion of the new transition center. We had the Central North Gymnasium roof replacement, and that was part of a storm from 3 years ago where it actually was damaged to the roof, and that's now complete. Targeted lighting improvements we are completing in the T&I building at Central. Targeted asbestos abatement, and that's at both campuses. It's more prevalent at Central, with it being an older building, than it is at West. Upgrade to our outdated boiler controls, and then we also relocated the shot put area at the Central campus. So going forward, and again, this is a lot of information that was already presented to the board. So pending facilities projects at Joliet West. And this is, you're gonna see 2 years. So you'll see this summer, and then you'll see next year, next summer. And the reason for that is twofold. One, the indoor air quality projects that are approved through the grants are potentially 2-year projects. It's definitely a 2-year project at Central. So at Central, it was reported that this summer we essentially we put in a new infrastructure, and then the next summer we actually bring in the new unit because no one can be in the building when we take off the old and put on the new unit. I mean, we have to bring a crane in and do all those types of things. And at West, we're hoping that the replacement of the HVAC occurs this summer, but that's all contingent on us receiving the equipment. A little different at West and Central. We can't demo at West unless we have the equipment on site, because once that equipment is demoed, that HVAC system is gone. And if we don't have the equipment, then we're in a lot of trouble at that point, right? So nothing's gonna happen until that equipment is on site. Hopefully, it's on time. If it's not, it's gonna have to be a project that happens next summer at West. And so part of what you have even in the packet today is a recommendation to purchase equipment so that we can hopefully have it here in time for that summer project. Another big one at West is the boiler replacement. We have 3 Fulton boilers at West, 1970 Fulton boilers. One is completely gone, so essentially it doesn't work anymore. A second one, we are making sure it's getting us through this winter. We knew this was coming, but we have to replace those boilers before next winter. We do believe instead of having 3, that we can operate with 2, because now they're just more efficient than they were from 1970. So that's, we've been working with our architects, Sudesh, who presented last month, and we need to get out to bid and do some of those things so that we, again, can have a recommendation to the board, hopefully have that boiler in place before next winter. But again, nothing will happen unless we have that equipment in place. The IAQ project for the auditorium, we talked about that. IAQ project for the weight room, ROTC office, and the fitness room. You see asterisks by the fitness room because it may be recommended based on when we receive bids. So right now you have part 1 of the bids. Part 2 will be coming in March, and that bid will tell us if we can recommend additional projects for the upcoming summers. So that's why that's there. The replacement of the varsity baseball press box. We had initial quotes, and those initial quotes came over the $50,000 threshold. So at that point, we must bid this project. So we're working with the architects now to prepare specifications so that we can get out to bid and get that project hopefully completed over the summer. Small gym painting, that was actually scheduled for this past summer, but due to COVID, we had to utilize that space for those type of operations. So we're hoping this summer that we can get into the small gym and paint it. We did the same thing with the main gym when we actually purchased a new gym floor. The video wall at the cafeteria for West. So similar to what we have at Central, we are obtaining proposal to add video walls to the cafeteria at West. And hopefully we'll have that proposal here in the next few weeks so that we can move forward with that. And then stripping and seal coating the parking lots. It's just time for our parking lots to be totally stripped with seal coating versus the patchwork and small seal coating in regards to those things. Yes.
What does IAQ mean?
Oh, I'm sorry. Indoor air quality. Yeah. Sorry.
We just throw around those acronyms.
Yeah.
We're sorry.
Yeah. Then the pending facility, and I'm saying pending here, this is actually summer of 2022. We've already started some preliminary walkthroughs with the architects. This conversation has been had here for a couple of years, and that is the replacement of the stadium turf football field and the stadium track. And that's at both campuses, so you'll see that at both campuses. And again, we're trying to get ahead in preparation for next summer. So we are working with the architects with that. And I believe you'll see green on the presentation. And what that indicates is that's part of the strategic plan. So that's why you see that there. And then also the stadium in terms of LED light retrofit. So there needs to be a lighting upgrade at the West Campus. And funding for this project is recommending through our bonds. And so like we did 3 years ago, we have a schedule for when we can actually go out to bonding. And what we did 3 years ago was because, and hopefully we'll be able to do this again, because where we are financially, we were able to go ahead a year early and borrow from ourselves and then pay ourselves back when it was time to bond. And so I'll be working with Elizabeth, our bond counsel, to see if we can do that again so that we can be on schedule for next summer to do this replacement versus the summer of 2023. So if we're in a position to be able to do that, that'll be a recommendation we'll be bringing forward. And that'll be sometime in the summer that we would do that. And that would take care of both replacements at each campus and potentially a new roof at the T&I building, which is desperately needed. So then here again, at Joliet Central, again, the same things. Indoor air quality project for the auditorium, gymnasium, the main gym floor refinishing, This is also a continuum of the damage from the roof that we had to repair first, and now we can get to the main gym floor and refinish it. And again, the striping and seal coating of the parking lots. I also have here as my note, but you don't see it on the presentation, the CTE program. So we've been identifying the different spaces within the CTE program. And we already did the metal labs. What's scheduled for this summer is auto rooms and the health rooms. And hopefully the following summer, which is 2022, it'll be our foods labs. So we're trying to coordinate with the innovation grant and with district to determine how we will fund it, because the innovation grant does not, you cannot spend on renovation of a particular space. It's only for equipment and supplies. And we know when we start talking about foods labs, I mean, one piece of equipment can easily be $50,000, $60,000 when you start to talk about commercial grade and things like that. So that's not including if we need to bring in new electrical, new wiring, new lighting, paint, all of those different things. So, in working with Chris McGuffey, we're coming up with solutions for each of these spaces and an estimated budget for each of those spaces within CTE, and then come up with a plan on how we will actually renovate those spaces. And that will be presented to the board once we complete that document. And then, of course, again, pending facilities projects at Central. Again, it's the turf replacement for the fields and track, and then the T&I roof replacement. So another part of this is, and I have to thank Mr. Justin McNally. He's right there. So he's the driver's ed coordinator at Central. And probably for the past 5 years, he's been trying very hard to obtain funds to replace the simulators at each campus. And he would go out and seek grants. We would work, put some language together, budgets together, and then we don't receive the grant. So I just told him, hold on, it's going to happen. Just keep trying to do the things that you're doing. So when I spoke with him this year and said, we're going to do this for the summer, we budgeted for it. I know it's always been in the back burner, and it's needed. And I know you all have seen some of the presentation here, but when you really see exactly what we're talking about, it's definitely of need. So the driver's education program serves about 14% of students each year. The current simulators are over 30 years old, to the point where the manufacturers have stopped making parts for the machines. You can't even find the machines anymore. They're just old and outdated. Simulators have problems with accuracies. Lesson films are from the 1970s to the 1900s. There's a car in here that kids probably can't even identify with some of the cars and simulators and things that's happening in here. Students cannot control the vehicles during the film sessions, 13 video lessons, and then there's no opportunity for mastery of base learning. So the recommendation is to replace the student driving simulators, 15 models at each campus. It'll allow for instructors to provide individual learning through differentiated lessons, provide detailed report on each drive that gives important feedback on how the student performed, mimic the actions of a semi-truck, allowing students to prepare for a CDL license. And I have to add here, we also partnered, and this was before the pandemic, we also partnered with Cadence, who's one of our partners. We actually provided an abatement for them. It's a logistical trucking company, and they have a program called Teens Traffic and Trucks, Teens and Traffic. And they would bring students from our district out to their facility, and they had different simulators that students would go through. So they had a simulator where it was the local JPD, and they'd talk about just driving and rules of the roads. They had an EMT simulators where They would actually show students what happens when they're injured, and now you have to be transported to the hospital. There was another state simulator where state police actually would have a dummy body in a car, and they would show how if you don't have your seatbelt on, how your body just bounces in the car and throughout. And then there was another simulator where you can actually get into a truck, or you can get into a car, and you can see what a truck can see in different positions of where the car is in terms of relation. So we're hoping to start that back up again once the pandemic cease here. Also to provide videos that are designed for students with special needs to help them receive their license and allow instructors to create situations unlikely replicated in practicing driving sessions. So here's some of the pictures in terms of the current simulators that we have, and then the projection that we have up on the screen. And there's that 1970, I couldn't tell you what type it is, but. So I just wanted to give some feel of pictures. And this is what new simulators look like. So, and then you can see some of the pictures. I mean, when you think about, if kids, grandkids, PlayStation, all these different, like, it's as clear than those types of things, right? And so, but the simulators are great, and you can kind of see where you can drive at night, you can drive during the day, driving in the snow simulators. This one here, parking lots at night. So definitely, different from what we currently have. Railroad crossings, things like that. So they'll be able to simulate quite a bit in regards to the slippery roads, parking, parallel parking. And so with that, that's the recommendation. We're hoping that come next month, we're looking for proposals now, working with different vendors to meet our needs, and we're hoping to have that recommendation to the Board of Education in February. And if everything goes right and we can actually obtain those simulators, that will be work for this summer also. We know we have to do some work in each of the classrooms. So again, if we don't receive the simulators, we're not going to start in on those classrooms, because once we start to rip up those classrooms, that's it. Those simulators are gone. And so, so we'll be strategic in how we need to do that, but that's definitely a project that we'll also be recommending to the Board of Education. Again, I want to thank Justin for all this hard work and just, stand on me and keeping it in the forefront of some things that need to happen for the kids.
And for being here until 10 o'clock.
And for being here.
Say that, thank you.
Yeah. Any questions? Yeah.
I just want to say thank you so much, and thank you for staying on top of this. We have children that have to navigate Interstate 80 every day,
Right.
one of the most dangerous thoroughfares in the country. And they also have the unique obstacle of bridges that are icy in the winter, and that sometimes go both ways, and sometimes just don't work at all. And I just think it's really important. And I've always been worried about I-80, and then my 18-year-old child got hit by a semi this year, which is everybody's worst nightmare, right? And she ended up being okay. And he was faulted, for some of the things he did, but my biggest thing was, she's alive, thank God. So I think this is going to be extremely helpful to our students and our parents, because there's a lot of concern and worry about I-80 every day. And just the traffic in Joliet, and having some of them having classes on both sides of the city. So thank you for staying on top of that, and I'm really hopeful and excited for that. And thank you for everything else you shared, too.
You're welcome. Other questions? No.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for the update. And that concludes the superintendent reports.
Okay, now we can exhale. We go to our action items. Good thing for all the reports that we have. Action item A. Cafeteria salary schedule. Can I get a motion to approve?
Second.
Any questions?
Yes, this is actually a recommendation, spoke to the board last month. It's in conjunction to the salary schedule for cafeteria staff. By Illinois law now, we must meet minimum wage, which is $15 by January 1st of 2024. And the administration believes that just due to the area and everyone's actually increasing their minimum wage to get closer to this $15 per hour sooner than later. And for us to stay competitive, be able to attract and retain staff, we're recommending that we increase that hourly from the $12.71 to the $14 an hour starting this semester, and then come next school year, we will increase it to $15. And that will put us about a year and a half ahead a schedule of what the legislation recommends.
Roll call.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stipp? Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Transportation and memorandum of agreement. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Question or comments?
Yes, this is another recommendation that we spoke to the board about last month. And this isn't just in regards to an incentive for our transportation staff. And what this is, we were talking about coming up with ways to try to incentivize our transportation staff. We have a great contract, but we wanted to come up with some other recommendations. And other districts are now moving in this direction or have moved in this direction. And essentially, it's a perfect attendance incentive, so that if a staff member has perfect attendance for the week, there's a $75 bonus associated with that. This is normally part-time staff, normally retired staff or staff who potentially have other jobs. And so we're trying to put incentives in place so that they're here for our students. They've been doing a great job, I mean, especially during the pandemic. But this is what we're also seeing in other contracts. And we just definitely want to at least keep pace or stay ahead with the competition that's out there in terms of, again, attracting and returning staff.
Okay. I just have one comment. I really like to thank Mr. Shaw and the Transportation Department, how they navigated through the shortage of our bus drivers in some of the critical situations that have arose. And I appreciate that.
I would second that. We had our issues, but I think they were far less than they could have been.
Yes.
Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stipp? Mr. Edmond?
Yes. C, technology lease agreement. Motion to approve.
I'll move.
Second.
Second.
Comments or questions?
Yeah, so this recommendation is to purchase 2,200 new student computing devices and 700 devices for staff. And so each year we bring to the Board of Education a recommendation for lease. And we've done this over the past 12 years. So this is a continuum. One big difference here is we actually started last year. We normally would have 3-year leases for devices, but the industry have become, their devices have become more robust and durable, so that last year we realized that we can keep these devices for 4 years now. And so what we will have occurring is each freshman class will receive a new device and keep it for the 4 years. And then we would continue that cycle, along with the staff devices, and that's been 3 to 4 years also. And we actually increased that number because the need is greater because of the pandemic, and we just have more usage for our staff or interns or student teachers in regards substitutes in regards to those needs. So we just wanted to make sure we meet that need and we have an adequate amount of devices here. Another piece to this is we also receive roughly $350,000 from the state, and it's an initiative for to try to address the digital divide. So we receive these dollars for what they call the Digital Equity Grant, and we are earmarking the $350,000 to go towards the purchase of the student devices. In addition to that, due to the pandemic, we also are going to receive another $400,000, and this is the Emergency Connectivity Fund, again, associated with the digital divide, and this is through our E-rate program that we have through the federal government. So essentially, we're going to receive $750,000 to offset the cost for our student devices. We do believe, at least with the Digital Equity Grant, that will be in place for another few years, if not for a longer period of time. So I believe we'll always have some support to help offset those student devices going forward.
Thank you.
I looked at this and initially didn't like it at all. And Dr. Hampton spent an hour on his day off running down the particulars of this, and I think he's cut a pretty good deal for the district on this lease agreement.
Thank you, Dr. Hampton. Roll call, please.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stipp?
Yes.
Can I get a motion to approve indoor air quality bid recommendations?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Question or comments?
Yes, this is the first phase of the indoor air quality projects scheduled for this summer and next summer. And the recommendation we have before the board is the structural steel for Central and the pre-purchase equipment for Joliet West. And due to, again, to long lead times, we felt that it was in the best interest to try to get these packages out early and get these processed so that we can hopefully have equipment here prior to the summer so that we can begin the projects and hopefully complete West project this summer.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stipp?
Yes.
E, approval of edits. Motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Question or comments?
Yes, we have a recommendation to approve auditing services for the school district. Essentially, we've worked with Wormer, Rogers, and Duran and Roussan for over 24 years. We've had a great partnership. They're local here in Joliet, and essentially it's time to renew their contract, so we have a recommendation to renew for 4 years.
Roll call.
Mrs. Stipp?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Motion to approve of the Joliet Township High School Strategic Plan.
So moved.
Second. Question or comments?
Hopefully I was able to answer all of your questions, and I do think our recommended facilitator will serve us well, and the process will be similar to what we've done in the past, which I think will be very helpful to us at this time.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stipp? Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer? Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Motion to approve of the mental health and substance abuse resources.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stipp?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer.
Yeah.
Motion to approve H 1 through 9.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Roll call, please. No. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer.
Yeah.
Mr. Bean.
Yes.
Mr. Coffey.
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff.
Yes.
Mr. Edmond.
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn.
Yes.
Under the same subject, number 10, resolution of authorizing a notice to remedy.
I motion to approve the notice to remedy for Tyra Crabtree as discussed in closed session.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? No questions, comments. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn.
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer.
Yeah.
Mr. Bean.
Yes.
Mr. Coffey.
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff.
Yes.
Mr. Edmond.
Yes. Approval of, a motion to approve 11 through 16.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Edmond.
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn.
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer.
Yeah.
Mr. Bean.
Yes.
Mr. Coffey.
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff.
Yes.
Student discipline recommendation.
After receiving and deliberating the information contained in the hearing officer's report, the Board of Education is charged with deciding whether removing the child from his or her learning environment is in the best interest of the school. 2, what the rationale is for the specific duration of the recommended expulsion. 3, whether all appropriate and available behavioral and disciplinary interventions were exhausted, and whether the continued presence in school would either A, pose a threat to the safety of other students, staff, or members of the school community, or B, substantially disrupt, impede, or interfere with the operation of the school. The Board of Education must then convene into public session to formally vote on the motion to expel if the expulsion is the consensus arrived at during executive session. With that, I move under case number W212216 to recommend expulsion until June of 2022 and placement at Lincoln School.
Second.
Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Lynn.
Yes.
Mr. Edmond.
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer.
Yeah.
Mr. Bean.
Yes.
Mr. Coffey.
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff.
Yes.
I make a motion under case number W212217 to recommend expulsion until January of 2023 and placement at Lincoln School.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stiff.
Yes.
Mr. Edmond.
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn.
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer.
Yeah.
Mr. Bean.
Yes.
Mr. Coffey.
Yes. That's all, thank you.
Well, unfinished business. And we have new business.
Yes, I can make a comment. So, I think, Ms. Rico can attest, this is the largest, press policy update we've ever received. And so this is all the policies that were in that. So it's broken out into the first two, which are 5-year review. So there's very minimal changes. There is one new policy. And then there are many, rewritten policies. There's minimal changes on most of them, but they're due to legislation. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. There's a lot of them, but how I would summarize them is most of them there's minimal. But again, I'll be happy to answer any questions. And hopefully the summary was a little bit helpful. No action, this is first read, so according to board policy, if possible, first read, and then month 2, action to adopt policies. So if there are any questions, please let me know, so that I can gather the information that you need.
So you don't have to read all the list tonight. You got some time to get it done. Okay.
I was confused in your email, you talked about a color coding.
I just color coded in the attached Excel document, just to help a little
Okay,
bit.
gotcha.
To outline, some policies have options. And those, when there's an option, then consult the board attorney to just make sure that the option is the recommended from the board attorney. And then I put that information in the notes section.
Okay, gotcha. I was looking on the actual,
Oh, yes. So I believe there was about 5 policies that had some options to them.
Okay.
And then I think too, the one new policy I highlighted as well.
Okay, thank you.
But if you have any other questions, just give me a call.
If you could color code all of our.
Right.
Don't, I might do that.
Board reports. No. Just thankful for, I'm just saying this, thankful for the team of administrative. Sometimes we don't make a whole lot of comments about the tremendous job that Tanya does in preparing us for these packages that we receive. Because
those are books.
It is a task, but we appreciate your efficiency in keeping us straight so that we can be informed of all the things that we have to do. So we thank the administrative team for all the work that you do and all the presentations and all what the administrations do. And we also thank you for waiting this long in these board meetings. We thank you for all of it.
I'd like to thank the board members.
Thank everyone, right?
Yes.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
I have a question real quick.
Yes.
What's color coding are you guys talking about?
It was in an email with the policy, I think sometime last week. I can go back and look at it, but it was a spreadsheet.
How did I miss that?
It was a separate attachment.
Okay.
Yeah, I missed that too.
I can resend it if.
No, I have it.
I'm not seeing it. If you can.
Oh, you're not?
I'm not. If you can just.
I'll send it.
Thank you. I appreciate you now. Well, I always do, but.
I'll resend it, it's no problem.
Okay, thank you.
So there's no announcements or comments from the public comments, correct?
No, but I would like to say that I thought, we handed out the gift cards for Dunkin' Donuts, and our staff was very thankful to the Board of Education for thoughtfulness, and, it was very nice to have in-person institute. Not everything is easy, but it was nice to be around each other and to be with each other. So I know our staff was appreciative of that, so thank you.
I thank the board for allowing me to go there in person, to be able to thank the staff at that time, because I felt like it was important that we just didn't talk like this, but we come off the websites and go in person and shake hands with, so with me representing to be able to have a talk with them during that time. I know some of you all could have been there, but you work and I'm retired. So I'm not rubbing it in. But, so that we can come there, and I represented the board at that time, so I was appreciative to be able to be there. I like to say this, I really believe our district is second to none, and our staff does a tremendous job during this time.